The M&A Advisor is very pleased to be joined by Greg Bedrosian, CEO of Redwood Capital, also the co-founder of Redwood. Thank you so much for being with us, Greg.
Thank you. It's great to be here today.
Tell us a little bit about your company.
Sure. So we're an investment banking firm that focuses on technology, media, and telecom companies, really worldwide. We have 8 offices between the US and Europe, and so a lot of what we focus on is working with growth stage companies on the sale to the large global corporates, predominantly between the US and Europe, although increasingly we are seeing a lot of activity in Asia as well.
Let's talk a little bit about the hurdles that you've seen.
Sure. So cross-border M&A does differ from pure domestic M&A. I like to divide the hurdles really into 2 categories. One more structural and the other softer hurdles. So the softer hurdles are really around culture, language, work style. Those are actually in many ways the trickier ones because there's no easy solve. It's more tied to experience in working in those regions or getting advice. The more structural side are those that tie to accounting standards, legal, regulatory, et cetera, currency issues. And in those cases, those are areas where investment bankers, attorneys, accountants can help one structure a deal to probably mitigate some of those risks.
Your company has been at this a very long time, and so you do have a lot of experience on your soft and the harder hurdles. Let's talk to us a little bit about regulation and changing regulation in Europe, what you've seen.
Sure. So in regulation, particularly in Europe, and of course each region is unique, but most of the regulation that impacts M&A tends to revolve around either workforce-related issues or intellectual property-related issues. On the workforce side, a number of countries in Europe are well known for having very strict issues around workers needing to approve transactions, government stepping in and approving transactions, which one doesn't see here in the US. So those really need to be thought out and structured and often add a few months to a transaction to get it from start to finish longer than a normal deal. The other element around intellectual property really revolves again around more government regulation, trying to get approvals from the relevant bodies for, say, a US acquirer to acquire a French or a German tech company that has strong local intellectual property. There's some ways of structuring transactions around those elements, but again, awareness going in is an important aspect.
And staying with Europe for a moment, with the volatility and the problems we've seen with the refugees and the crisis there, and some borders getting closed in some European countries, what effect is it, or do you foresee that having on M&A moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. So particularly in the areas that we focus on, tech, media, telecom, it's a very entrepreneur-driven segment of the economy. And so as a general rule, legal immigration is a great way to foster an entrepreneurial spirit. Certainly, given some of the political issues that are going on and border closings, that's created some angst amongst both investors and corporate acquisition in some of those regions. The reality is, in most cases, in the tech world especially, a workforce is global. And so if one region is having issues with sealing borders or creating a more difficult immigration process, that probably won't impact too much, again, in the tech sector especially.
As an active member in several foreign policy organizations, what special insight would you have that you would say perhaps a competitor might not have?
Well, yeah, being involved in both a number of policy organizations as well as an investment banker and M&A practitioner, particularly in the cross-border deal flow, it does give, I think, our firm and me personally insight into what is going on at the policy level, both the European Union, each individual country, that will help drive and give us the ability to give some ideas and insight to clients and prospective clients that others might not be able to provide.
What do you see as far as the forecast for M&A activity moving forward into 2016 and possibly into 17?
So we've seen a very strong, particularly in the middle market, 2015. We see strategic rationale, again, especially in cross-border M&A within the middle market, to continue strong in 2016. There are always headwinds out there that could change that, but we do see across most of the world, relatively slow macroeconomic growth, which often means when boards of directors sit around trying to decide how they can enhance their own company's growth trajectory, it lends to M&A more so than just organic growth and development. And so those elements combined, we feel, will lead to an equally strong 2016 from an M&A perspective.
Okay, now you talked about the sectors that you deal primarily with. Do you see growth, though, in other areas as well?
Well, there are different dynamics in other segments. So as an example, on the opposite end of the spectrum, the energy sector, given what's been happening to commodity and oil prices, is actually in a different phase of transaction activity. In some cases, it's more restructuring in a sense. In some cases, it's more opportunistic buying and consolidation. And so whether there's growth in a sector or contraction, and the energy sector is an example of current contraction, it still provides opportunity from an M&A perspective.
Greg, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure.
Great
Thank you very
talking to
much.